Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers are currently falling apart. Frank Reich was just fired, and we see all the jokes on Twitter. I don't gotta make that joke.
No.
But we see all the jokes on Twitter. Frank Reich got canned, and for the rest of the season, I don't know who the interim is. I don't know who they elevated. I don't remember if they even announced who they elevated to the head coaching position.
I haven't seen it.
But regardless, Panthers are a 1-10 football team. Currently own the number 1 pick, but don't actually own the number 1 pick because the Chicago Bears have their pick. So there really is not much of a light at the end of the tunnel at the current moment for this team. So I guess my first question is, do we think that firing Frank Reich was the right move? And what's next for the Carolina Panthers?
So they elevated Chris, I might not be saying it right, Chris Tabor, the team special teams coordinator.
Interesting.
That is the interim head coach right now for the Carolina Panthers. Frank Reich had to go. But 11 games was his stint?
Yep.
11 games.
David Tepper has zero
as
patience.
The head coach of the team. He didn't last as long as Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was 13 games. I think this is the second or third shortest coaching stint of all time. And he's the first NFL coach since the merger to be fired in back-to-back seasons. He was the first coach hired this offseason.
Nice.
And he's the first one fired.
I actually liked them hiring him too.
Yeah,
I liked it.
That takes some special doing. The Panthers are just such a fucking mess. It's so hard. Like, where do they go from here? I don't know. They don't have their pick this year. They traded away.
First overall.
And even if they do, like, all they're going to do is draft someone really good, and then when it comes time to pay him, trade him.
Or not trade him and let him walk.
Yeah, that's all they do.
Which is what Brian Burns is about to do.
As far as Bryce Young, it's tough, man. You want to root for the guy. He's a number 1 pick. He was, as you said, absolute animal in college. But he's on his 3rd play caller in his first season.
Did Frank Reich take over play calling duties, or did he originally have it and then got rid of it?
You could be right. The OC took it over, and then he took it back.
And now he's gone.
So now this guy might be calling the plays.
I don't think their special teams coordinator is calling plays. I think their offensive coordinator is probably calling plays.
But they fired him too earlier in the season, right? So they have a new offensive
No,
coordinator?
they didn't fire him.
Oh, okay.
He just took play calling from him.
But still,
I'm
man,
sure.
Bryce Young just has nothing to get acclimated to. I mean, you compare him to C.J. Stroud. Okay, obviously C.J. Stroud's a better quarterback.
Well,
that's not even a question. Stroud is in a better situation. So if they swap places, I don't think Bryce looks as good as Stroud right now, but he probably looks a lot better. He's not in a good situation. So I think what's next for the Carolina Panthers, listen, you drafted this guy number 1 overall. You got to get him some help. Put an offensive line around him, get him some weapons, and make sure he's your guy. And if he's not your guy, move on, or else you end up like the Jets with Zach Wilson, and if you can't admit you made a mistake. But we're not there yet. Right now, just get Bryce Young in the best situation possible, I think, is where the Panthers go from here.
The Carolina Panthers are setting Bryce Young up for failure, and it's clear as day.
Yeah.
And this starts with the ownership. This starts with David Tepper. So here we go. David Tepper bought the team in 2018. He inherited a team who had just drafted DJ Moore and drafted Dante Jackson on the other side of the ball. Those are the 2 rookies that year. This is the team with Cam Newton at age 29. He had 3,400 yards this season, 24 touchdowns. You have a Christian McCaffrey in his second year who just went over 1,000 yards in the first season Tepper took over in 2018. 7 touchdowns, went over 100 receptions, 6 touchdowns on the ground. You have a young star in Christian McCaffrey. You have DJ Moore, like I said. You have a young third-year Devin Funchess who looked like he could be something. You have Curtis Samuel in his second year who still producing
Just had
today.
a great Thanksgiving Day game.
You have Greg Olsen, who passed his prime, but you still have Greg Olsen. You have good offensive pieces. You have Trey Turner, who was a Pro Bowler this year on your offensive line. You have Taylor Moton in his second year, who was a great right tackle. You have Ryan Khalil at center. You have a good offensive line. On the defensive side, you have Kawan Short, who is a Pro Bowler this season. We know what Kawan Short could do in the interior of the defensive line. You have Luke Kuechly, who is arguably the best middle linebacker of this generation. You have a young Shaq Thompson in his third year who looked like he could be a star. You still have Thomas Davis. Past his prime, it's still Thomas Davis. Important to the Super Bowl team from 3 years prior. Dante Jackson, like I said, you just drafted. You have James Bradbury on the other side of him. You have some promising pieces when David Tepper took over. They finished 7-9 this year. The following season, they fire Ron Rivera after 12 games. Perry Farwell takes over. They go 0-4, finish the season 5-11. Kyle Allen's the starting quarterback.
I remember that.
Still of all these pieces, Shaq Thompson, the interior of the defensive line kind of, you still have some older pieces, but you lost, Short and stuff. You've done Terry Poe, Gerald McCoy, whatever. The next season, you finish 5-11 again, Matt Rule's first season.
Oh, boy, that was a
Teddy
disaster,
Bridgewater is the starting quarterback. Christian McCaffrey missed a lot of time. Mike Davis was the starting running back for most of the season.
Man had like 80 receptions that year.
You still have a young receiving core. Like I said, you still have DJ Moore, still have Curtis Samuel. You now have Robbie Chosen Anderson, who had a fucking 1,000-yard season. You have 2,000-yard receivers. Defensively, you still have Shaq Thompson. You draft Jeremy Chin and Derek Brown. And you have Brian Burns in his second year. I forgot to mention the year prior they drafted Brian Burns.
Boy's a dog.
So you have young pieces on defense. Like I said, you have Dante Jackson in his second year, in his third year, Brian Burns in his second year. You have Derek Brown, Jeremy Chin you just drafted. You have Shaq Thompson in the middle of the defense. You have some young, promising pieces on defense. You need to figure out the quarterback. That's what it seemed like. Get McCaffrey healthy, get a quarterback. 2021, Sam Darnold. Chuba Hubbard's
I remember
the
greatest 4-game stretch of a quarterback ever.
He was 3-0 with McCaffrey. That's all I'll say.
Oh, yeah, it was 3 games.
And then he lost 3 straight. But yeah.
Now you bring in Hassan Reddick on defense, who has the best year of his career, 11 sacks alongside Brian Burns. You still have Shaq Thompson. You have a young secondary with Dante Jackson, Jeremy Chin. You bring in Embed, AJ Boye. They, once again, have pieces on defense. 2020
going downhill.
2022, you're 1-4 with Matt Rule. You fire him. Bring in Steve Wilkes. You finish the season 6-6.
Yeah, they looked respectable.
You finish the season 6-6, and then you don't bring him back. You don't bring Steve Wilkes back. You bring in Frank Reich. Bring in Frank Reich, who's supposed to be this offensive guru, and then you trade the franchise away to get Bryce Young. If this was 3 years ago, 2018, when I said, look at all those young pieces on defense, they're a quarterback away, that's when you make that trade. When they weren't a quarterback away. They weren't a quarterback away. And now you traded everything you can to improve your roster around that quarterback. So I have it in front of me right here. This is from an article I found. Sorry, I'm not giving you credit. I just copy-pasted it into my notes. In exchange for the pick they used to draft Bryce Young, the Panthers traded wide receiver DJ Moore, 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks to the Bears. And one of those first-round picks is pretty much going to wind up as the top selection in this year's draft. This is a historically rare kind of beat. The last time a team traded a draft pick that wound up as the first selection in that draft was 1978, when the 49ers traded their first-round pick in the 1979 draft to the Bills for the pick that ended up being O.J. Simpson. Buffalo used that top pick to draft a linebacker who ended up electing to play for the CFL instead of playing for the Bills.
That's about as Buffalo
and that's how
as it
bad
gets.
this is. It's an all-time bad beat.
Yeah.
The Panthers are throwing screen passes on fourth and 6.
My God, yeah.
They have the wide receivers aren't creating any type of separation. The offensive
They're jumping out of bounds when they catch passes.
that Jonathan Mingo clip
was
is
so
crazy.
bad.
That Jonathan Mingo clip
so
is crazy.
bad, bro. On Ghetto Gronk, they were clowning him so hard. They're like, Bryce Young is bad in quotation marks, and it's just Jonathan Mingo jumping out of bounds as he's trying to catch a pass.
You have no receivers. Your offensive line isn't blocking. Geez. And that defense that looked kind of promising back in 2018, 2019, those guys got to get paid. And it starts with Brian Burns, who you did everything you can to keep around. You could have gotten multiple first-round picks from the Rams. We all know about that rumor. That was true. You could have gotten
at least A.
Right, multiple first-round picks from him.
First-round pick.
and you choose to keep him, and now what? You're gonna have to trade him. These young pieces that they do still have on defense, they're gonna have to start trading away because it's an offensive league today, and they have no signs of any type of developing pieces on their offense, and they have no future picks.
Pretty sure they have cap room. There is one bright side here, and I'm pretty sure they do have
cap room.
Owner doesn't like to spend money.
T. Higgins. No, it's funny because David Tepper does like to spend money. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
He's not one of those guys that doesn't want to spend money. He has zero patience because he's so fucking rich.
Yeah.
Like, that's part of the issue. Like, we're getting these owners who aren't like these guys are so rich that they expect results like this. And if it doesn't come to you, then first thought is just, it's fucking fire everybody. And that scares me for Bryce Young because, like, who knows how many guys we're going to have potentially coaching him or anything like that. Like, who knows if there's a new GM in town by the end of this fucking season. Like, Bryce Young, if you don't show any flashes, you don't have a great game down the stretch, who's to say the GM's ass isn't on the line? Like, who's to say that? Like, David Tepper could go nuts and just fire fucking everybody.
Well, and the thing that's so concerning is just you set your future back so far by trading all these picks for Bryce Young to the point where I don't think it's salvageable by the time Bryce Young's rookie contract is up. So by the time maybe you have some sort of young, talented roster around Bryce Young, it's going to be time to pay him. And we all know the window to win in the NFL is when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal. By the time Bryce Young's rookie deal is up, they're not going to be competitive. They'll maybe be scratching the surface of being competitive. They'll maybe be able to salvage some of the picks by trading some of their defensive pieces. But now you have to lose defense to supplement your terrible offense, your terrible offensive direction. It's rough. It's rough. And like you said, they do have cap space. There's some moves to be made within the margins that could help this team, but I think they set themselves so far back that...
Yeah.
And you know this, Matt. I loved Bryce Young coming out of the draft class. The smartest quarterback in the draft, in my opinion. And I know that doesn't say much. It's all about what you do on the field, but your brain matters is at the quarterback position. He was making great reads in college. He was carrying a Alabama team that lacked talent compared to previous years. He was carrying them on his back, doing everything he can. And we've seen it in the NFL. We've seen some flashes. We've seen some pocket awareness. We've seen him navigate the pocket, throw some good balls. It's just no quarterback would succeed in this situation.
Yeah.
It feels like they're just so far from making it happen. But I do think, like, there are going to be plenty of receivers out there that are available. And it feels like every move that they made this offseason just backfired. Like, the Miles Sanders move was supposed to take some pressure off him.
God,
He's been atrocious. Miles Sanders has been horrible. Adam Thielen, by the way, did not think he'd be as good as he has been so far this season. But you can't rely on a guy that old to carry it out throughout the entirety of the season, as we're seeing him slowly slow down now throughout, obviously, as the games pile on a 35-year-old body at this point?
I mean, it starts with the offensive line, though. I mean, in terms of pass blocking, according to PFF, they're the third worst team in the NFL. Worst team is the Giants.
Of course.
And in terms of run blocking, they're the fifth worst team in the NFL. It starts with the O-line.
Third worst is the Giants.
Their O-line is in shambles right now. The weapons are in shambles. The defense isn't great, and all the young pieces you have, you're going to either have to trade or pay. Like, it's just... I don't see the situation getting any... You lack picks, so you lack an ability to add any type of young talent. Like, how does this get better for Bryce Young? How does the situation get better for him? How do the Carolina Panthers set Bryce Young up to succeed going forward?
You fucked up not trading Brian Burns, so now you have to pay Brian Burns.
Just to trade him. He's not going to be
which you're not even going to be able to do
if they
for a while if you pay him.
For a year or two at least.
You missed your window of opportunity to capitalize on him, especially being that you didn't have a first-round pick. Like, first of all, Brian Burns, not a type of guy that you want to trade, but in a situation where the Carolina Panthers are in, it's a guy that you have to trade.
You see the Commanders, they went and did it, not with one guy, with two guys.
And didn't even get a first-round pick for
with
either
two
one
guys, they went and did it.
Yeah, I mean, look, Sweat and Chase, like, you got a second and third.
Bite the bullet.
Exactly. You got a second and third for those two. And And then Sweat obviously ended up signing an extension with the Bears. Chase Young, yet to be determined with the 49ers. But regardless, I mean, you had the opportunity to get a first-round pick. It was there, if not more, because Burns has been that damn good. Like, if this team was any good this year, we'd be talking about, like, down ballot Defensive Player of the Year, like top 5, top 7-ish Defensive Player of the Year voting. And we can't because they're 1-10. So I think you have to pay Brian Burns. But not only that, there's other defensive pieces that you're going to have to either pay or you're going to have to trade this offseason. And then one thing that I think is absolute must at this point, T. Higgins, you are a Carolina Panther at this point. And if it's not T. Higgins, it's got to be Michael Pittman. If it's not Michael Pittman, it's got to be, I don't fucking know, one or two of these guys. I think Gabe Davis is going to be out there, but I think Gabe Davis is set to be a New York Giant at this point, if I'm being entirely honest with you. But T. Higgins needs to be signed by the Carolina Panthers. He will not be back in Cincinnati. They will not be paying him, especially after the tumultuous season that he's had so far. So you have your opportunity to go get an alpha number 1 receiver. You go get him, even though I think there's a little bit of an opportunity for T. Higgins to be similar to Kenny Golladay, if I'm being entirely honest in what happened there.
I think it starts for Carolina. I think it's got to start with coaching staff. You need to establish some cohesion within this organization. You got guys, it's a revolving door. Guys are coming in and out, and you just can't establish a culture. It's not a place people want to go right now, and you need guys that want to be there. I think a good name for them is the Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson, yep.
Go get
That's
him.
the hire.
Yeah.
Cut the check.
For sure. Go get him. Establish
those
culture.
have to be the moves.
Right.
Yes.
You have to get Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you have to get T. Higgins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you don't get both of those guys, you completely failed this offseason and might have failed your organization for the next 5 years.
Is there another
Agreed.
head coach name out there? Do you guys think of? No, it's Ben Johnson.
Not really.
Maybe if Eric Bieniemy
That's the only
doesn't
other name
want
I
to
can
hang
think
out
of,
in
but-
Washington, you need an offensive-oriented guy.
Right.
You need someone who could build a relationship with Bryce Young. It was supposed to be Frank Reich.
Yeah.
It was supposed
There
to be
were
Frank
rumors that Frank Reich wanted Stroud, so that definitely could have played a
I
factor.
heard
in
those
all of
as
this.
well, to be honest.
But you're right that you definitely need in today's NFL. You definitely need an offensive-minded coach, and Ben Johnson's just a perfect candidate for that.
Ben
More
Johnson
than
makes perfect
just
sense.
that, you need it. It doesn't get talked about enough how important relationships
Yeah,
are in the NFL in terms of coach-player relationships. You need a guy that Bryce Young likes. I know he's only in his first year and hasn't been great, so like, what say does he have? But he's a guy who you want to put your entire franchise in this guy's hands.
And you need a guy that believes in him.
Right.
Too.
You need like a Mike McDaniel with Tua.
Yep.
Mike
Yes.
McDaniel changed the outlook of Tua's entire career. The outlook of his entire career. You need a guy who's going to work with Bryce Young. And to me, it's Ben Johnson or bust right now.
I'd say so.
Here's my thing. Who's the Houston Texans offensive coordinator?
Why am I blanking on his name? I heard it so many times this weekend, bro.
Okay. And he's young. This is the exact type
What's
of
his name?
Bobby Slowick.
Bobby Slowick, yes.
There's the type of hire that you want to make.
Yeah.
There's another type of hire that you want to make
Sure.
with how good he's been with CJ Stroud.
I mean, even look at what like Stan Scheichen's doing with the Colts,
Yes.
bro.
But he's a head coach.
Right.
He got the job there. Like,
Yeah.
But he
So-
wasn't OC. Like that's the way to do it though.
exactly. Well, that's where you need a hire now.
Yeah,
That's the thing. The new thing is get a young quarterback and pair him with a talented offensive coordinator, and it's that simple. Typically,
me-
you want to stay young.
To me, it seems like no matter what, no matter who this coach is that you go out and get this offseason, whether it's whoever this interim guy is, I doubt it will be. I'm sure it'll be someone else. Whoever it is, they have to last for the remainder of Bryce Young's rookie contract.
Yeah.
They have to.
Ideally,
David Tepper bought the team in 2018 with this new intern guy coming in, including all the interim head coaches. This is the 6th head coach.
yeah,
6.
yep.
He's owned the team since 2018. That's more head coaches in years he's owned the team. That's just a problem. It's a problem. And it's not just the owner. I'm just pointing out what has happened since he has owned the team.
No, but he has a
Because-
lot to do with it.
Right, because before that, they're 3 years removed from a Super Bowl appearance.